Depression is around the fact that something might happen to my child.
But there is limited focus on their mental health. How are you coping with this?
Hats off to all the mothers out there, all the ladies out there get into any trouble situation after saying
I
this.
faced a pretty intense postpartum depression, and this was in a situation where I had been a career woman my entire life and I had a lot of support around me as well. But the pressures of actually conceiving a child at a later time in life, because I had my child in my late 30s.
Okay, prenatal depression is often overlooked, yet it's a powerful reminder that mental health struggles can begin long before a baby is born. It's essential to nurture the mind of an expectant parent just as much as the growing life inside. Because a healthy start begins with a healthy heart and mind. Welcome, everybody, to this podcast and a very unique podcast on the journey of prenatal depression. Let me call it as my guest says prenatal wellness. So I have with me Asha, who is a prenatal wellness coach. Welcome, Asha. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Emil. Lovely to be here on the show with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving some time out and joining me on this podcast. So, Asha, a bit about your background, if you can tell something about your background and I mean how you started this journey, or before that as well, if you can tell something.
Sure. So I'm Asha Puthran and I am a perinatal wellness coach. And by perinatal, I mean the period when a woman would have conceived her child right through to having given birth and a couple of years after that. So that entire period is known as the perinatal time period. So before birth, prenatal, and after birth, postpartum time period. And I have been in a perinatal wellness coach for one main reason, that when I gave birth myself, I faced a pretty intense, just a second.
No, no problem.
I faced a pretty intense postpartum depression. And this was in a situation where I had been a career woman my entire life and I had a lot of support around me as well. But the pressures of actually conceiving a child at a later time in life, because I had my child in my late 30s. So there was a lot of concern, and even the doctors would scare me, saying that you are giving birth at a later stage, you may lose the child, so be very careful. And they actually recommended that I do not do any exercise. It was very counterproductive to my mental health and my physical health that I didn't get the ample amount of exercise and that my body needed, and that my mind was completely stressed out at that time. Thankfully, there was no ill effect. I did have my child, but right after that, because I had an emergency C section, it was a traumatic birth and I ended up in depression because there was a lot of body pain related to it and I hadn't done the necessary exercise, so I didn't have a normal delivery. So there was a lot of things going on. When I faced that situation, what I fell back on was my experience in yoga and Ayurveda. For about 10, nearly 15 years now, I have been associated with yoga. My mother used to do yoga, and then I started doing some teachers training courses. I did a diploma in yoga, and slowly but surely, I got back on track. I was able to build up my physical strength as well as my emotional stability through the practices of yoga and Ayurveda. And that is why I decided I will now work as a coach to help women on their perinatal journey so that they can just bounce back quicker. Because all of us get back to work in 4 months, 6 months' time right after giving birth. It's not an easy journey.
Mm,
So that's a little bit of my background. I also have been in IT for the last 20 years. So I know the struggle that working moms face.
mm. Well, that's actually very extraordinary, I would say. I mean, you said that it was in late 30s that you gave birth to your child. Is it a certain age bracket that this depression comes in, or is it like any time it comes?
It's for every age group really, but women who are in the later time period are a little more susceptible to it. But
Mm,
if I would say what causes depression, a couple of things add more factors into depression. If you have had depression in the past, like I did, or if you had some sort of a physical concern, if you've had infertility issues, and this could come at any age, right? Isn't it, Ahmed? It's not like a 30-year-old would face those. Nowadays, even 20-year-olds face infertility issues quite frequently. So that's a concern. And if they find out that there is something or anything wrong with the child that they are carrying. It could be certain disorders, it could be certain health issues, it could be ectopic pregnancies. So, any number of issues that the mother takes into her mind and says, there's something could go wrong with my child. If that emotion sits into her head, it causes depression quite easily. So some of us are more prone to it. Some of us
mm,
only, it's sort of like gestational diabetes. So you get the diabetes around the time of the depression. So
mm,
postpartum depression and perinatal depression is surrounding your child's conception and birth.
mm,
But some people are more prone to depression than someone who has never had a history of depression before in their lives, who have been physically extremely healthy, who have conceived naturally. So there would be lesser chances for them to get depressed.
mm, mm. Okay, okay. So you're saying that lesser chances would be for people to get depressed, those who did not have any history of having depression. And it is
Absolutely.
yeah, okay. And it is mostly around the fact that if let me say, if I define it, it would be that postpartum. Okay, sorry, before that, is prenatal or postpartum the same thing? You've been using these two words actually, so I just wanted to clarify.
Prenatal is before giving birth, postpartum is after giving birth.
Ah, okay. So prenatal is before and postpartum is after. Okay, that's very good. I thought that these words are used interchangeably and it's the same thing. So good. Prenatal depression is around the fact that something might happen to my child
Correct. Something
after.
might happen, or they're not, the mother does not, or the going to be soon mother does not feel the bonding with her child. She feels like I will not be the best mom. And she feels like I'm not connected to my child and something might go wrong. All these feelings that come up in her mind ends up in a little bit of a depressive situation for her.
Mm, Okay. And so how are, I mean, because this is the first time I've heard about a prenatal wellness coach. How are actually, uh, what are doctors? I mean, let's say that you are okay, a prenatal wellness coach, and let's talk about prenatal first. How are doctors actually addressing this issue at the moment?
That's a great question. I personally had depression in the past. So the advice that was given to me was to opt for a C-section versus a normal delivery, because a normal delivery and the pain that is associated with it could bring on a depressive or a psychotic episode, in fact. So that was the only advice that I received. And another advice that I received was very wrong in my case, which was because I was carrying my child in my second half, or should say later 30s. I was told do not exercise because you might have a miscarriage. So what that ended up doing was I had a lot of physical issues in a later point of time,
Mm,
versus there should be a holistic view that there should be, and there isn't from the doctors, around the perinatal care, which should say that you need to get your nutrition, you need to get your supplements, you need to get your exercise. And there are different semesters that that mother goes through, her first, second, third trimesters. And safely, she can do a lot of physical activity to keep herself active. From the community and the background that we come from, it is often advised that you are physically active in the time preceding a child's birth, because that enables you for a natural childbirth. And
mm,
I was actually recommended not to do it. While I full well understand the doctor's concern that I could have had a miscarriage, I ended up having a pretty traumatic birth because of that. So
mm,
I don't, I believe it has become a bit of a norm that C section is often recommended for a lot of women.
mm,
It's become a norm that the baby becomes the priority versus the mother, as it
mm,
should be. But I believe equal priority should be given for both of their health. There should be a
mm,
holistic plan that should be given out to mothers as well as the child that they are going to have. How do they address that with nutrition, with exercise, with a regular plan? And I believe that is missing. So every time the doctors hand you out, it's a prescription for supplements and
mm,
regular tests to see if the baby is growing well.
mm, mm,
Never
mm,
once, either myself or in my clients that I work with or my friends and family that have often visited doctors, have has the question come up, do you get regular exercise? The blood tests
mm,
are done to see if the nutrition levels are fine. Mostly the levels
mm,
of the elements within your body, in your blood, is
mm,
that fine?
mm,
Those are checks which are done. But there
mm,
is limited focus on their mental health. How are
mm,
you coping with this? And to
mm,
prepare them in the future for a birth. So that is missing, I would say.
And that is actually a very interesting point that you've raised because uh, myself, I mean, my wife gave birth to five children. Uh, Two were actually miscarriages, and one was actually because once you are saying this, and I'm actually I'm having my the time when my wife had miscarriages. I'm bringing those times in mind and uh, seeing the fact that okay, what exactly was happening. So she had two miscarriages, and uh, one of those was a stillborn actually after 7 months. And what and she already, because now I'm just relating to her, and I mean after this I might ask her as well. So before that she already knew that the child is not going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean it was I think the third month, third month I think, yeah, she already knew that the child is not going to survive. But and the doctor said that okay, you have the option of abortion or just keeping the child. So she said that no, I'm not going to abort it. And
Mm.
this was actually her because, I mean, it is if you abort it, you are actually literally killing the child. She went ahead with it. And then I think after 7 months, the child, I mean, was born, was still born, but passed away. I would say hats off to all the mothers out there, all the ladies out there, what they go through and what exactly then, I mean, I hope everybody has a healthy child, but it's not the case. We know that. And uh, that's pretty awesome, actually, the work that you are doing, Asha. And you are very right because along those lines, and this was and what happened with my wife, it was about I think maybe 10 years, yeah, almost 10, yeah, I think 10 years back,
Mm.
more than 10 years actually, and at that time there was you're right no con and there was no concept of such type of mental health or coaching around those lines at
Mm.
what a mother has gone through before a child. And let's take this miscarriage as an example, that
Mm.
what a mother has gone through before or what she is going through after. And this is something that has to be, I mean, in this professional medical world has to be taken care of as well. And you're right. I mean, there is nothing sort of a mental health service provided from or recommended, I think, by the doctors. You're right. They just recommend around tests and yeah, that's pretty much it. And they say, I think, eat apple maybe,
Yeah.
eat apple, get those iron supplements. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that those are the main points actually they say, and nothing around the mental health or mental wellness. So they don't say. So I mean, what other than this coaching that you're providing, and this is the first time I've heard about it, something around this, is there any other uh, service that is being provided by any other organization or company that you are aware of?
There are maternal health services available now. You're right, Ahmed, and thank you for sharing your experience and your wonderful wife's experience going through what she did at that stage. A decade ago, this was much lesser, but nowadays you do have perinatal services provided by certain companies in the form of coaching or more in the form of counseling. So, more of psychiatric services in the form of counselors are available as a resource for people to go to when they give birth. And I highly recommend that people do this because it's a phase of life that all of us enter into rather unprepared. So different situations will require you to be very strong, which you may or may not have, and you need that support around you. And in nuclear families nowadays, once again, it's missing. Your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your families, and even friends tend to distance themselves when they find out that you're carrying and you're a little away from the social scene, so to
Mm,
speak.
mm,
That couple tends to get isolated, and right there the kind of mental load that goes on the mother, especially if there is a special situation as the one that you mentioned. It could be a miscarriage, it could be that you're carrying a child who has, let's say, a Down syndrome, or even a completely normal child. You're going to give birth to them.
mm,
No, there are some communities where they do some preparation for the childbirth. You
mm,
often The mother often hears some experience from their own families if they are with their families, like Middle Eastern countries, some Asian countries. There is some support. Even African countries, there are some support systems around the mother, in which case
mm.
she is a little better prepared than her Western counterpart. And
Okay,
the Western
yes.
world is making up for it through some maternal health services that they provide. Here in
Mm,
Australia, they do that. Around the time that you have conceived, you would have those options available to you that you can go to a counselor, have a chat with a counselor around your mental health. Perinatal services are being provided. It wasn't that case 10 years ago, but
mm,
nowadays there is a maternal health nurse who checks in on the mother.
mm,
But
mm,
it is a regular check, which is more like, are you well? Are you coping with this well? Are you taking your supplements? Are all your tests normal? And once the
mm,
child is born, for a few weeks, the mother gets checked in on by the nurse how the mother is doing. So the
mm,
chances of catching a depressive episode or a psychotic episode are slightly higher.
mm,
But if still not enough, still not sufficient enough to avoid special circumstances for sure,
mm,
because
mm,
you need to make sure that you avail those services. As a regular check in the hospital when when the child is born or before the birth of the child, I don't think there are a lot of checks, and even the availability of these services are not known to the moms and the dads that if I need this, this is available to me. That's what I
mm,
find out. When something goes wrong, after that you go for psychiatric services, and it leads into medication long before which, if there was enough counseling and therapy provided, they could have avoided requiring medications.
mm. So you're saying that there are not many proactive approaches towards this.
It's all mostly focused on the physical wellness of the mother and the child and not the emotional wellness. That's what I would
Mm,
feel. Even now that is the case.
mm,
Probably if you notice, for example, someone has gone in for a checkup and is completely off, is
mm,
very sad, and is not
mm,
answering the regular questions, that is probably when somebody might ask. But from my experience, medical practitioners are very isolated in the way they approach medicine and a human being's assessment. If
mm,
your doctor is looking at your child's wellness, is looking at how you are doing physically, not emotionally. So that needs to be a different doctor who's looking at you. Whereas if I talk about Ayurveda, you have
mm,
one doctor looking at your overall wellness, how you
mm,
are, your nadi, your breath patterns, your overall health and wellness. It's looked at in a more holistic fashion. And it is
mm,
an Ayurveda doctor is not a bone specialist or a skin specialist or a hair specialist or a
mm,
OBGYN or a gynecologist. An Ayurveda
mm,
doctor is an Ayurveda doctor. So he
mm,
is a doctor who looks at you from a complete picture.
mm,
So that is what is sort of missing. And there is a history that is also missing. So when I go to a general physician or when I go to my obstetrician, I often go to different general physicians most often, and then I go to different OBGYNs, and the history may or may not carry. Nowadays, you do have medical records which go into the system, but they're
mm,
not really carrying over from one practice to another practice. So if I'm trying to reach out to one doctor, he's not available, then I go to the next GP.
exactly. Mm,
Unless you have recorded it well, you don't have the history. And all of these are black and white, while mental health is extremely gray. So
mm,
I guess in
mm,
this, you need to know me to find out that I am off
mm,
my
mm, mm,
mental behavior versus if you were coming to me, if Ahmed's wife was coming to me frequently and I had a history of how she is, today I could say there is something off. How are you doing, Mrs. Ahmed?
mm,
That's not a question anybody asks. All they
mm,
ask is, you're here seeing a doctor, what's the problem? And then
mm,
these are the symptoms that I would say, and I'm medicated for those symptoms. On the
mm,
other hand, the causes would be something else entirely. I could be going through a complication saying that I am giving birth in my later period, or I could be going out with a complication just that my first child isn't dealing well with my pregnancy right now. I'm worried how he or she will react when he gets a sibling. So these are all areas where mental health workers need to come into
mm,
picture. I
mm,
gave you one very serious example of miscarriage, which you said, and another simple example of a mother's worry. Another mother who is probably worried that in 2 to 3 months she has to go back to work. And she'll,
mm, yes.
most mothers do not want to do that. Most mothers want to stay at home with their child, but it's not an economy where you can survive on a single income. So you have to
Mm,
go back to work, and the little child is at the hands of a stranger at a daycare, most often contracting different illnesses, coming back home sick all the time, and you're going back to work. So it's just a vicious cycle. And I
mm,
don't see all of these being discussed at a medical practitioner level.
mm, mm, mm. No, I get your point. I think one of the reasons being is because mental health, what I have seen being in this industry is that it's mostly reactive. It's not proactive.
Hmm.
And these type of services, which should be proactive, specifically in the case of mothers, I would say those should have some, I think, knowledge. I don't know the boundaries right now or the scope, I would say, of medical practitioners at the moment, what it is with regards to coming towards this OBG gynae part. But awareness among parents or new mothers who have already given birth to a child or the second sibling there is on the way, those they should have knowledge about it, that this is something that should be carried on. We should have like monthly sessions or like one session every fortnight or every quarter, so that you are in a state that you know how to counter the things that are going to come. One of the factors that you've mentioned is that back in our societies, or I would say 10 years back, 15 years back, the system or how we used to live was completely different from how we are living now, because how humans actually are changing the way they live due to a lot of factors. And there was, like you said, a nucleus family culture, or I can say, let's say, a joint family system over there. If I say from where I come from, Pakistan, or from where you come from in India. And these type of services are countered by the support that you get from the immediate family. Okay, or let's say nowadays there is a term over here that we call inner circle, where you have all these friends and friends that you talk to and you make a connection with. So back home in Pakistan or in India or in Asian countries, I think it was the fact that there was this support that was there from family. That is why having this conversation outside the scope was very limited. I would say outside the scope or with other people other than the family. You've mentioned Ayurvedic a lot, and now I'll come to this fact that what sort of practices, or I would say uh, coaching you do, what sort of therapies you tell about, how does this process go? Like, I mean, for instance, if a new mother comes in, in prenatal, not postpartum right now. I'm talking about prenatal only. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah, you got it.
Uh, Good. Okay. So she comes in. How do you take them through that complete process?
I've been working with a lot of postpartum moms, and the
Okay.
few prenatal moms that I have worked with, this is what we take them through. In the initial stages, it's a lot of conversation about how they are doing, what their
Mm,
history has been, understanding their circumstance, daily circumstance, family circumstance. Have they been working? Have they taken a break from work? How are they coping with the fact that their bodies are going to change, that they're going to be giving birth to a child, and are they well equipped to take care of the child thereafter? Do they know what is coming? Because quite often the question that couples get is, when are you getting married? Once you're married, when are you having a child? And nobody says what happens once the child comes. And most people disappear after giving a gift or a congratulations that the child is born. Very few people come up and say, "Can I babysit? Can I help you out?"
mm, mm,
For better or for worse, that's the society that we're in right now. In
mm.
some
Yeah, right.
societies, yeah, in some societies like the ones that we come from, Ahmed, there is a postpartum period of 30, 40 days when that mother is supported by family around her, and there are certain rituals that she goes through for recovery that is missing in the Western world. So
Mm,
those are
mm,
the things that we ensure that a new mother or to be mother is aware of, that this is what you need for recovery.
mm,
The
mm,
each of those semesters that she is pregnant, there are certain exercises that she can do, and most often food is something that they take care of. Unless I have morning sickness, I would take care of my nutrition, because the baby has a habit of getting what it needs from the mother's body, to the extent that if needs to grow its bones, it will extract the calcium from the mother's bones and it gets the nutrients from the mother's blood. And
mm,
so most often, unless you have nausea and you're unable to eat something, nutrition is sort of taken care of, and the modern medicine says have these standard set of supplements, and so the physical needs are met. It's the emotional needs which there is a gap, and that is what we address in our program largely. If the mother has any limiting beliefs around her capabilities as a new mom, will she have the necessary support from her husband, from her family? Does she have that community around her? In my program, we largely emphasize on building a community around the mother. It is said that, you must have heard this, it takes a village to raise a child. I believe it takes that same village for the mother to recover and get back to herself. A mom, more often than not, is the center of is like the backbone of the family. And when she has given birth, she is not able to be that backbone, because she needs that time to recover and recuperate her strength right back up to the stage that she was before. So we build that community around her, make sure that she reaches out to the people around her to build that support system for herself. It
mm,
could be in the form of an online community where
mm,
she has other mothers to talk to
mm,
through her pregnancy, even afterwards,
mm,
and reach out to people around her to make sure that she has the support when she needs. Understand the importance of self compassion. Not say that I need to be an ideal mom with a happy, healthy baby who doesn't cry. None of these happen. The
mm,
baby's gonna fall sick often. It'll be crying all the time. You're gonna be sleepless, even if you have the luxury of 6 months of maternity leave, which is the maximum I've heard of. Even then, it's going to be the hardest 6 months of your life, because the child needs to build its sleep cycle. The child needs to latch on, drink milk, grow well, hit all its milestones, get all its vaccines. It's one milestone after the other for the child. All these things nobody tells the mom. So we make sure that they are aware of the circumstance that they have signed up for, and that if they are not physically and mentally fit enough, they're going to sort of not enjoy the motherhood. So, to
mm,
enjoy the phase of being a mother, we ensure that she is physically and emotionally capable. We help her build a routine right from morning. Ayurveda recommends that. Ayurveda recommends what is known as a dinacharya. A
mm,
dinacharya is a daily routine which starts off from early morning times before the sun rises. till the time you go to sleep. Your
Okay.
body and mind constitution is divided into seven different types in Ayurveda. Each of us human beings have different tendencies, different likings, preferences. The
Mm,
Western medicine doesn't do these classifications while Ayurveda does. It says that there are some people who like the cold weather, some people like hot weather. And it's not, it's because that is how I am built. I like to be a little slow with my reactions, or I am hyperactive, right? So each human being is different. You can group them into seven categories, is what Ayurveda says, and that dinacharya, the routine, is recommended according to your prakriti or body mind constitution. The seven types are known as prakriti. So
mm,
all these things is what we inform the mother. We do her classification to understand what group she belongs to. Depending on the trimester that she is, we recommend a exercise routine that is safe for her and the child. We provide a diet routine for her based on what she already eats. This is
mm,
an important part. We don't do any diet fads, any restricting diets, because you need your child to grow with all the nutrition, and we recommend things that is common and, what should I call it, indigenous to your daily living. So if you're from a certain part of the world, use the oils that your ancestors have been using throughout. Recommendations like that, which they can follow and which would be beneficial for them and their child, we will take them through those, both those elements, the physical elements as well as the emotional and mental wellness elements. Then the mom is going to come to us and say how she's doing on a regular basis. Based on that, we will address those facts. We also work with our clients through NLP. So, NLP is a way that you promote communication between human beings. So, one important factor is your partner. How are you communicating with your partner? How you both will manage your child? That's a module that we
mm,
work on. So these are
mm,
four different modules that we work on, Ahmed. So
yeah.
physical wellness, emotional wellness, social wellness.
No, no, good. I was actually going to come to that point. How important when you were mentioning about community, and you said that you work on physical, emotional, mental, and partner support. So these are the four things that you work on. So once you talk about community, yes, so I get it that okay, you are going to you have uh, you create a community with all these like-minded mothers or would-be mothers and they share their experiences and everything. How important is partner support in this fact?
If I was to give percentage, then it's 50% mom and 50% dad. There used to be a time when the mom was 100% and the dad was responsible for the actual conception. A decade or two ago, a lot of the times the dad was providing and the mom was caring. But now the roles have been distributed equally amongst them. So the mom is still doing a lot of the work, but the emotional support immediately comes from the father. So even if he is unable to be there with the child, he needs to be there with the mom when she's at her weakest, and she should be able to communicate to him all her, let's say, frustrations of the day, the physical aches and pains she's going through, all the emotional roller coaster that our hormones are taking her on, because your body is under a torment of these hormones varying so hugely around the time that you're conceived. So quite often partners, fathers come to me and they say that she is not the same that she was before conceiving. These chemicals called hormones, estrogen, progesterone, prolactin, all these hormones are extremely powerful. They put the mum or the to be mum under so much stress, anxiety, emotional overwhelm that she is not able to think and act like she used to before. You can't run, you can't go out, you can't eat and drink what you want. Everything changes for a woman when she becomes a mother. So, who is there to support her? It has to be the father. The first person that she can turn to is the father because the child is dependent on her. She can't be dependent on the child. Mothering of the one person that is there to support her, and hopefully in the case of a single woman it's an extremely complicated situation, but with partners, your partner needs to be there emotionally, even if we, like I was saying, if he's 9 to 5 he's working and after that he comes back in, At that point of time, he does need his rest, but he also needs to be there to understand exactly how has the mom's day been going, and give her a break so that she can just get back to normalcy for an hour or two, and then get back to being her, taking up her motherly duties over again. So that communication between the two of them needs to be built before the child comes into picture. Once the
mm,
child comes, what will you do? How will you help out with
mm,
your routine? Do we need to get additional help, or
mm,
can we meal prep? Can we do other activities which will make our life a little simpler? Do we do takeaways on these days? Or can we get some help so that once a week, a couple of hours a day, the mom gets some time off or the father gets some time off, and there is still somebody. The community outreach needs to be through these partners, through the mom and the husband, reaching out to their community to make sure that they are well supported in this journey of becoming new parents. So
mm,
I would say 50-50.
mm,
It is largely a mom's responsibility, but
mm,
nowadays, with the kind of nuclear families that setup that we have, I'm actually sticking on my 50-50 percentage. That's how
mm,
important it is. Even if the mom is doing all the work, the emotional support needs to come from the partner a lot, saying that you've done a great job, you've done your best. If the child has fallen sick or is crying all the time, it's not on you, it's on us, and we'll do our best.
mm. So I think what you mentioned is husbands or fathers, they need to be adaptable to situations that are coming in with their wives or would be mothers. And it then depends on the fact that having a partner or being married to somebody, it's actually a long-term commitment. And there are going to be ups, there are going to be downs, and it's not easy to maintain a relationship. It's hard. It's not that easy. So having said that, you need to show a long-term commitment with your partner and navigate through all of these changes because, I mean, these are there. And this is a reality, this is a fact, and you cannot hide from all of these things. And you need to face all these things head on and support your partner in order to navigate, I mean, not your partner, so that you both can navigate through all these challenges that are coming in. Okay. This was something, I mean, what about postpartum? Uh, let's talk about postpartum first. That how long, and you've mentioned prenatal and certain and the semesters that you take through for all of your clients, and you have seven categories, and you categorize them from according to that. How about postpartum? How does that shape, and how much time would it be required for a woman to be out of this postpartum situation? Or is there, or is there not any such type of situation? What is your take on that?
Postpartum depression or postpartum, there's also known as postnatal depletion. That's another condition. So,
Mm,
what these conditions essentially mean is that the mom is not up to her usual self, and
mm,
she is often faced with feelings of sadness, overwhelm, guilt, even anger. A lot of suppressed feelings come out like as if they have anger issues. So, quite
mm,
often, you see them getting angry with their elder child for little situations which in an earlier situation they would able to manage quite easily. So how long does it last? It is said that if you are facing these issues because of hormonal differences from the time that you've given birth for about 15 days to a month or a couple of months after birth, it's just known as baby blues. So that's just a
mm,
temporary phase. The hormones stabilize, the mother gets back to her original mood. But anything longer than that, anything longer than a few months time, which goes into 6 months, 1 year, and postnatal depletion can is known to last up to 10 years. Not depression, but depletion. Depression is a medical condition. It can last you as long as it takes for the mom to get over it, through medication, through help, through counseling, through therapy. It could last a few years. Just a second.
Mm. No, that's all good.
Yeah. So it can last anywhere from a few months to a few years. That's the answer.
Mm.
So the
Mm.
depression, because it is a medical condition, it's not unlike a chronic situation. It could last you a very long time, and the dosage of medication that you're taking could increase or decrease if it's
So
depression.
depletion, sorry to cut, depletion and depression, they are different. Postpartum. Okay.
Depletion is not a medical condition.
Okay.
Depression is a recorded medical condition.
Mm-hmm.
Depression is more of it's a terminology that is used for when mothers go through all these symptoms, but it is
Mm-hmm.
still not recorded as a medical condition.
Mm-hmm. 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 That's it. 10 years is a long time, actually.
It could go up to that long. Moms could feel like I've often faced moms of 3 years, 4 years, 5 year olds saying that I still never got back to being my original self. And then when they've gone back to work, they often feel like from the time that before they gave birth, the kind of confidence that they had as being a career woman,
Mm.
that has never come back for them. They've always some of especially if the period in which that they were gone was long, or if they've
Mm.
had a slightly more complicated birth and then recovery, and they just don't feel like themselves again. There's a lack of
Mm.
confidence, there's a lack of self-esteem. They feel like there's something missing. Often, even 6 months make a difference, but if it's a year, 2 years gap that they're then going back, they may go into a different role. So at work, they feel this confidence issues. Back home, like I said, one symptom, the anger management issues.
Mm.
A person who has never had anger management issues in their life quite often tends to flare up. And this was not them before because they have been suppressing their emotions and it comes out in a different fashion. They are angry, they are frustrated, they're easily overwhelmed. And none of this was, it's no longer just hormonal. So
Mm.
the hormones have normalized and still your body is under a lot of stress and overwhelm.
So this means that postpartum, if the anger issues, specifically anger issues, continue for maybe more than 6 months, or let's say after a year as well, it is due to some past issues as well that might have led to this situation, which was not there before. Before the birth, it was not there, but after the birth, this, yes, was there in that baby blues time that you mentioned, but after that also it carried on. So this means
Continue.
that might have been due to some past issues and there was some suppression in that specific emotion.
Yes, and it's not just anger. Anger is one expression of the feelings that overwhelming feelings that they have. Quite often, it is feelings of withdrawal from society, withdrawal from their partner, feeling sad all the time, feeling guilty that they have not done their best and that they're not being the best mom, they're not being the best partner, they're not being a good colleague. So all these feelings of overwhelm that they carry day after day tends to express itself outside in the form of anger issues, in the form of, and that's just one way of expressing. Quite often the feelings is that range that I just mentioned. Feelings of sadness,
Mm.
feelings of what should I call it? Depression brings on an image into your head, right? So all
Mm.
those feelings plus anger issues
Mm.
plus feelings of it's pretty much an emotion that they cannot control. If I could have the choice of not being sad and overwhelmed all the time, I would take that option. I would not want to be sad all the time. I would not want to be experiencing feelings of guilt and overwhelm all the time. Like I'm not going to get out of it. Like there's no way out of this. That is how a woman in depression feels. That she
Mm.
cannot get out, that she can't see the light of day. She
Mm.
feels like this is constant, this is my future, and I'm
Mm.
not doing the best for my child. I'm not
Mm.
able to give the best to my career. So many moms say this. I'm just juggling and doing whatever minimum I need to do at work versus before I was a top performer. So a
Mm.
lot of moms express this emotion to me. That is
Mm.
because they are needed with their child and they're not able. Somebody who was working till 8 p.m. in the office can no longer do that. She has to get back at 5 o'clock, pick the child from daycare, go back home, and then cook and then care for her child. So you are
mm,
not the same person again. You need to make certain adjustments. The
mm,
conversation needs to be had with your partner. The conversation needs to be even had with your bosses, that this
mm,
is my limit. 9 to 5, I do my best, but anything more I cannot do. Or other flexi arrangements needs to be worked on. So let's not
mm.
get into that area, but
Okay.
pretty much the feelings of not being able to be my older self for
Mm,
prolonged periods of time.
mm,
Very much the uh, what should I call it? The topmost emotions are sadness, guilt, suppressed anger, frustration. So these are those top emotions that govern your life.
mm. So I think this after postpartum, and specifically, let's talk about uh, career-oriented women or women who are working.
Hmm.
It's about their mindset after that and them realizing the fact that yes, there is a choice that you have other
Hmm.
than being sad and
Absolutely.
venting about the fact that you could not maybe give milk to the baby on that time that
Hmm.
you had decided, but you could not. There is, and don't feel sad about it. There is another choice that you have available, and that is yes. This means that A, you are learning,
Hmm.
and B, this too is going to pass. Okay, so
True.
it's not about always being a top performer, or it's choosing for yourself what you want to choose. Do you want to choose sadness? Do you want to and live with it? Do you want to choose guilt and live with it? Or do you want to learn from all those things and move forward? So the choice is yours. That
True.
is the realization I think they need in
True.
order for them to move forward. And definitely communication with the partner and having the influence of partner and the partner working together with them after specifically after postpartum is very important if they are yes, I mean, now I hope I don't get into any trouble situation after saying this. Women who are working at home as well, they are also, I mean, doing a great job, but specifically who are in professional working in professional environment,
Hmm.
they need to be supported much more than those because they are handling two things. One is home and one is the office environment as well.
True.
So having a support from the partner who also is working in the professional environment, they giving some guidance to them, they helping them navigate all through these rough waters becomes quite critical. Yes, community is important as well, but as you mentioned, 50-50, that becomes quite critical. I have one more question for you.
Hmm.
So postpartum, let's say if it is a second child or the third child, let's say, have you do you have clients with second or third childs in postpartum depressions or prenatal? I mean, what do they have to do? Because the thing is that, okay, it's the first child who gets the most attention, then the attention gets lessened with the second and the third child, and or even let's say the third child is going to uh, be let's leave him on or her on his own, and they're
Yeah.
going to grow up on their own by looking at the older siblings. So,
Yeah.
wh- what is do you have such clients or?
Good question. And yes, the trend that we have observed is the same as well. The chances of getting depression or facing depletion, getting depression is higher with the first child because the mom doesn't know what to expect, and it sort of gets easier with the second and God giving a third child. However, the feelings of depletion, which is the mother feeling like there's no way out of this, I can't be myself again,
Mm,
those tend to get more with the number of children that they've had. That their life is not their own.
mm,
Those feelings could stay for a long period of time, and you would probably not even realize this because they are happy. It is a blessing to have as many children as you have. It's a
mm,
wonderful life in most cases. It's
mm,
just that when you don't recharge your batteries, you can't give a cup which is not full, you can't pour
mm,
into another. So that's the main problem there. So
mm,
with the first child, the chances of depression are more. With more number of children and more demand on the mother's time, the chances of depletion are more.
mm,
It needs to understand a little bit of observation on the mother and how she has been and has she changed over the years. How is she handling work and is she getting enough time to herself? By observing all of this, we can make sure that she does get that time that she needs away from
mm,
the children or some sort of support at work. There are employee assistance programs in place. So
mm,
in some of the bigger workplaces compared to the smaller ones, that support is available to her for flexible working arrangements, for counseling where required. Sometimes you can just talk and reduce the stress on you. That is what
mm,
therapy and counseling is all about. Sometimes
mm,
you might need to build up a routine to improve your physical and mental health. It could be both those elements together to
mm,
ensure that you get back to actually enjoying your second half of life where you have your children, you have your career, and you're still thriving instead of just surviving day after day.
mm,
So that's where it is at.
mm. No, I get your point. You mentioned about physical activities, and I'll come back to this point that you mentioned regarding exercise as well. When if a doctor or a medical practitioner says to the client
Mm,
that you cannot, like you were told that okay, you exercise is not physical exercise is not going to be helpful for you or the kid. After, I mean, postpartum, after
mm,
the birth,
mm.
how do you handle the body issues, the changes in the body that are there with the mothers? How do you handle that, or what do you recommend for that? I would say.
3 to 6 months after giving birth, I would say it becomes relatively safer to start exercising, whatever form of exercise you do. Although I am a yoga coach, I wouldn't say that you need to do yoga because everybody likes different forms of exercise. The different kind of personalities that we have. Somebody might like running, somebody might like swimming, somebody might like
Mhm,
cycling, jogging, or karate, or whatever it is that because post your 30s, your bodies tend to decline anyways, with or without giving birth to a child.
mm,
So, for your physical recovery, it is necessary that you adopt some form of physical exercise that suits you and begin slowly. Then build that into your daily routine. At least 3 to 4 times a day, make sure that you get 30 minutes to 1 hour's exercise mandatorily. So, build that routine for yourself and stick to it so that you can be your optimum best.
mm,
And yeah, that's the physical part of things. Emotionally, just give up on those ideas that we carry thanks to social media that this is the perfect image of a mom. Post recovery, she will have a flat belly as soon as possible. She'll be fit and running around her happy child in a beautiful meadow. Just give up on those thoughts of ideal motherhood and just accept the fact that your body did a great job. It was humongous, be it a natural delivery or be it a C-section. It's a major operation if you go through and survive and come out with a healthy child on the other side. Appreciate that fact, respect your body, let it recover slowly, and give it enough time. In about a year's time, you would be able to get back to your optimal fitness with a proper routine and good nutrition, without a doubt.
mm. That is a very wonderful message that you have given specifically around the fact that comparison, let's say, is a killer of joy. No need to
Yeah.
compare yourself to all those social media pictures and videos that are coming in of flat bellies and all those things. That
True.
is actually definitely going to be a roadblock on your road towards recovery. And yes, as you've mentioned, that after the year, they are going to be fit and healthy. They are going to have that flat belly again if they follow the routine, the
True.
physical exercise routine, and also taking care of their mental health as well, which is as much as important as their physical health. And I really enjoyed having this conversation with you, Asha. Any last thoughts? before we wrap up?
It has been a wonderful conversation with you. As while I talked to a lot of moms, so it was great to talk from a father's perspective, how things could be and what they were experiencing when their own spouse was going through a difficult phase. So thank you for sharing that. If I had to leave a last message, I would probably just say that build your routine. That's very important. Cut yourself some slack and be compassionate towards yourself. Moms, don't be so hard on yourself. It's okay, you're doing your best. You're doing your absolute best because nobody in the world cares for your child more than you. So you would by default do your best, and that's more than enough. Give yourself all the time that you need, and things will get back to being normal, your choice of normal, when you give yourself time and have that support around you.
Mm. Lovely message. Thank you very much, Asha. Thank you very much for coming on to the show and keep shining. The work that you are doing is incredible. This was actually the first time I heard about prenatal wellness coach. And this was after actually, as I mentioned, I think we were having a chat as well. I saw some movie on Netflix, and that was uh, quite, uh, quite hair-raising for me, to be very honest. Which was actually on this postpartum depression. And talking to you and knowing from a perspective that okay, what can be done for all these mothers, whether it's prenatal, whether it's postpartum. Awesome. Thank you very much for this, and you have a very wonderful rest of the day.
Thanks, Ahmed. You too.
Thank
And
you.
to
Mental depression is around the fact that something might happen to my child.
but there is limited focus on their mental health. How are you coping with this?
Hats off to all the mothers out there, all the ladies out there, get into any trouble situation after saying
I
this.
faced a pretty intense postpartum depression, and this was in a situation where I had been a career woman my entire life, and I had a lot of support around me as well. But the pressures of actually conceiving a child at a later time in life, because I had my child in my late 20s.